as an intellectual phenomenon. This is, I think, a very important subject. Professor Yakira's work is very important on an issue which I would argue, and others are arguing, is becoming sort of the new form of anti-Semitism, is the perception of Israel in some circles. So this is an important topic and will be an important lecture. And today, of course, as we speak, it's still Memorial Day in Israel. Israel is now in a moment of mourning for the soldiers and people who defended Israel. And in a couple of hours, they'll celebrate their Independence Day from a moment of mourning to a time of celebration. Professor Yakira was a senior lecturer and professor in the Department of Philosophy at Hebrew University. He's been there since 1994. He's also a member of the International Scientific Committee of Studies and the International Spinoza Institute in Jerusalem. He was educated at Hebrew University, where he received his BA and master's degree in philosophy and history, and then went on to do his doctorate degree at the Sorbonne in Paris, and did his degree in philosophy. He's written widely in English, French, and Hebrew. In 2006, he wrote a book that's looking at post-Zionism and post-Shoah, and it was translated and published by Cambridge University Press in 2009. So it's really an honor that you're here, and welcome to you. So thank you very much.
Israeli consulate in New York who sponsored and organized this.
Also, on behalf of Yusuf, thank you, Daniel Greenberg, and also Daniel Sharon. Sorry I didn't mention it.
And the opportunity or the occasion for this very short visit in the United States is precisely the book that was just mentioned here, which I didn't really intend to write, and even less so translate. And it is now written in Hebrew and translated into English, and it even have just come out in France, in French, and who knows what else. And this has taken me a lot of time and energy ever since I sat down to write a 100-word article, which came out in the form of a few hundred pages book. I am not a historian. I am teacher of philosophy. I wouldn't say I'm a philosopher, but I teach philosophy at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. The main thing I've been working on since my student years are 17th century philosophy. I wrote about Spinoza, Leibniz, Descartes, others. I also deal with quite a lot with modern philosophers, like phenomenology and other things. But at a certain point, I felt that something must be said about a phenomenon which has become, ever since I sat down to deal with it, a real problem. I would say, in Israel it is perceived as a strategic problem. And this is what is called neo-anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, Israel bashing. I was using the term of anti-Israelism or something like this. And since I first started writing the book, this has developed into real phenomenon. It's hard to need to judge what will come out of it and how dangerous it is. And, exactly, but certainly this is a very important phenomenon. Today in Israel is the Yom HaZikaron. We commemorate the deaths during all the wars of Israel, and tomorrow is the Day of Independence. A week ago, we commemorated Yom HaShoah, the day of the Holocaust. And this is a very special week and very difficult week usually in Israel. I guess it's for perhaps too, but maybe not that intensely. And my book precisely bears about this connection between Yom HaShoah, or Shoah, Holocaust, and Zionism in Israel, and more specifically on the ways in which, contrary to what this connection in Israel represents and what we very often say, and written, of course, on the ways in which the Holocaust has become actually a main argument, I would even say an arm, and an efficient one, in wide, all-out ideological war, struggle against Israel, and a very efficient arm. And I shall not get into the analysis I offer in the book in the way this is done. Whoever would like to see it can read it in the book. I want to concentrate on a few other things. Anyway, a week ago, precisely at the day of the Holocaust, parallel institution to the one we are here now, in Tel Aviv University, there is an institute for the study of anti-Semitism as well, headed by, probably, some of you probably know her, Dina Porat, good friend. They publish, they monitor the anti-Semitic incidents all over the world. And and I haven't yet had the time to read the report, but what I was published, and she was interviewed on different media organs in the last year, and especially since the war in Gaza, the number of called anti-Semitic incidents can be all the way from insults and to straightforward violence has doubled all over the world. In France, in England, in other places, this has become a real issue. We're talking about hundreds, many hundreds of incidents, more important, less important, of anti-Semitic nature in the world. I don't know how it is in the United States, but in Europe certainly this is beginning to be, worrying. Many times, though, when it comes to more incidents of the more violent and more rude, I would say, vulgar nature, it comes usually from I'm talking about Europe. It comes usually mainly from from two main quarters. It comes either from extreme right-wing hooligans in one way one form or another, or from Arabs, immigrants, North Africans often. This has always been, I think, anti-Semitism has always provoked violence of this kind. And I think basically this is not an interesting phenomenon. This is something to deal with, to defend against when it becomes dangerous, and sometimes it becomes dangerous. And this is the methods for local police and local governments to deal with. I don't think intellectually talking, it is a very interesting phenomenon. But there is another phenomenon which is much more interesting, and in many ways much more significant. And this is another form of anti. I don't want to call it anti-Semitism, and I'll try to explain. Maybe I'll begin with an anecdote. I think it's very significant, although it's very, as usual, it's very often in these cases, it's very difficult to pinpoint the exact significance of the thing. I'm talking about the invitation to come to the United States. This my first visit here was initiated in Minnesota. There's a guy in Minnesota, at the University of Minnesota, who is being very active in anti-Israeli activities, and he found himself completely isolated. So almost completely lonely in this, and he read my book and he offered me to come, and I came. It was very nice. It was a very nice place. We had wonderful weather there, and he organized a public lecture, something like this one, at one of the university institutes, which is called the Institute for Global Studies, and they had about 30 faculty. There were maybe 40 people who took the lecture. It was very nice, but there was not a single faculty present. There were students, some people who came, some Israelis, Jews, I don't know who heard about this and came, but not a single faculty came to hear what an Israeli professor has to say about the problem of anti-Zionism, Israel. And few months ago, this was the immediate, I would say, raison d'etre of my being invited there, was a visit by someone by the name of Omar Barghouti. Maybe you heard about it. If not, let me say a word or two. The guy is a PhD student at Tel Aviv University, an Israeli Arab, very bright guy, very articulate, who is globe-trotting the whole planet, or at least in the West, trying to explain and to justify the call for BDS. He is a student, an Arab student at Tel Aviv University, going around all over the place, calling for boycotting his own university. And he was invited, and there were a lot there, of course, a lot of faculty. I was invited afterward as a sort of counter discourse, and no one came. I think this is very significant. This is very significant in the situation in which we Israelis find ourselves here at American campus, in many American campuses, and in other places as well. Anti-Zionism is the name often given to this kind of, all kinds of, it's often quite different, anti-Israeli attitudes. And this is what I would like to talk about a little bit here today. Anti-Zionism is all the Zionism. It has been, at the beginning, basically a Jewish phenomenon. In the Jewish world where Zionism was born, from the beginning it was opposed by Orthodox, by communist, by Buddhist, by assimilationist, you name it. Here in the United States, I think that much of the more or less organized opposition to Israel as a state and to the Zionist idea as such comes, I say it with a lot of precaution, and I'm not sure that I'm right, but I think that it comes much very often from the reformist Jews. And in this sense, this has been always an inner Jewish debate. Since the beginning, though, of the Jewish Zionist immigration into Palestine and into the land of Israel, this opposition has become also, of course, non-Jewish. First of all, Arabs. The Arabs opposed Jewish immigration, the Zionist immigration from the very beginning, especially after the Balfour Declaration, when it has become clear that we are talking about establishing a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. This has become active and very soon afterwards violent opposition to the Jewish immigration. But this opposition was coming also from other quarters as well. For instance, just been reading a book, just to give you an example, about the Quai d'Orsay, about the attitude of the French foreign service and diplomacy, which is called the 1 century of betrayal. And it shows how constant the opposition of French diplomacy to the idea of a national house, of a Jewish state, Zionism in short, has always been there until more or less now. However, and then, of course, 48, 47, 48, the establishment of the State of Israel. The opposition to the State of Israel on many levels and many ways continued, and also anti-Zionism in many different forms. However, since I'm talking about mainly since 48, since the establishment of the State of Israel, I think that until lately, this opposition to Israel, to Zionism, anti-Zionism, I'm talking mainly about Jewish anti-Zionism, ideological opposition to the Zionist idea, and to some extent also non-Jewish. I would say that until lately, this anti-Zionism has been mostly passive anti-Zionism. To put it very shortly, people would say, in Hebrew we have a nice idiom, "Lo yimach chalki imachem." We are not part of it. You do what you do, you build your country, we are not part of it. We live our lives, whether it is here in the United States or elsewhere. Don't bother us with this. We have kind of feelings, but we are not part of it. It's your business. Since several years ago, I think I can more or less localize, the more or less precise point when this has changed, and maybe I'll say a word about it. It has become an active anti-Zionism. What is new about this, that the possibility, the idea of dismantling the Jewish state has become something which is legitimate to say. In very different forms, some of them more violent, some of them less, more sophisticated, more subtle. For instance, it has become a mainstream almost in certain circles, academic and otherwise, to talk today on the one-state solution. There are all kinds of excuses and explanation, but if you read, which things that I did, the very few attempts to offer a serious outline for what is called the one-state solution, you can see, and I'm not talking about the fact that it's not going to work anyway. Of course, everybody who has the slightest understanding of the situation in Israel, in the Middle East, or knows about how it works in other places, it's binational solution. He knows that, not to speak about it, about 95, 98% probably of the Jewish population and the Arab population would never accept real binational solution. This is not the point. The point is that, once again, I'm coming back to where I began this sentence. When you read the programs, the project, the very few ones that were trying to allegedly attack the question in a serious and scientific way, you see that it is always based on some kind or another of rejection of the right of the Jews to self-determination, namely to have their own state. People would say, yes, of course, the Holocaust, we learned from the Holocaust that the Jews need to have a haven, they need to be able to come, to run away from wherever they are persecuted and come to, let's say, its land. But they will have to give up, which is only a kind of imaginary and, not serious anyway, will to have their own state or state-like institutions. It's always like this. So, in other words, the idea of this active anti-Zionism, this is what I'm calling this active anti-Zionism. People would talk would talk seriously today about forcing the Jews, giving up the Jewish character of the state. Having one state, binational state, states of all its citizens. This is one of the slogans that is very current, which all hide the same thing. Jews do not have the right for self-determination. Or it is okay if we deny Jews the right of self-determination, one way or another. And the next thing, we have to take concrete steps in order to realize this non-national, post-national, anti-national, two-state, one-state, whatever. You call it whatever you like. There are many names and titles around. This is one thing that is new about current anti-Zionism. It is active and not passive. When did it happen? When did it become a legitimate discourse? My impression that this happened around 2000, the year 2000. And to make a very long story short, I would say the following. In 2000, after the failure of peace negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians in Camp David, led by Barak on our side, Yasser Arafat on the other side, many people became trapped in a sort of dilemma. Barak to go beyond the peace programs, the most radical peace program offered by Israeli left, at least, including, for instance, dividing Jerusalem. This has never been said explicitly by any of the Zionist left-wing diplomats, politicians in Israel. Yossi Sari, Yossi Bailey, you name it. Never thought that it would be possible. Barak accepted dividing Jerusalem, and this is only as an indication of the lengths to which he went in order to get an agreement. Arafat refused. Arafat refused. Now, I don't want to get into, there are many discussions around it. I don't want to get into it. I happened to write a book about this. I think I know what I'm talking about, or involved actually in writing some book. I think I know what I know about what I'm talking about in this respect. And I think that President Clinton did say what has to be said. He said there was an offer on the table, the Israelis accepted, the Palestinians rejected, all the rest is gossip. Gossip. And I think it was right. So at this very moment, if I had time, I would have told you a few very interesting anecdotes, because when this happened, I happened to be in France on a sabbatical. But we don't have time to get into it. Anyway, the minute this happened, the minute violence erupted in Israel, in the Middle East, between Israelis and Palestinians, still the what is called the Clinton parameter, the Clinton proposition was still on the table. You could have heard already in Europe, and immediately in certain circles of Israeli left, this discourse, they're not talking about the one-state solution. The dismantling of the Jewish state, of Israel as a state. Immediately, still, I'm saying still, Israel was offering to evacuate over 100 settlements, to divide Jerusalem, to go more or less back to the 67, to establish a Palestinian state. It didn't work. The cause of the failure was the Palestinians. And immediately afterwards, this active anti-Zionism appeared in on the stage in Israel and elsewhere. Now, there is a terminological problem here, which is more, of course, as is very often the case, is more than just terminological. What is this anti-Zionism? Is it anti-Semitism? Why talk about anti-Zionism here in an institute? What's the name exactly? What?
The Yale Initiative for the Interdisciplinary Study of Anti-Semitism.
Of anti-Semitism. Why talking about anti-Zionism, about anti-Israelism, about Israel bashing in here? So, and the answer is not simple. I want to say a few words about it. First of all, I would say anti-Semitism, I'm sure you know, is a recent term. It was coined by the second half of the 19th century. And it's in a very specific, historic context. Opposition to Jews. A few people were proposing lately not to talk on anti-Semitism, but about Judeo Judophobia, hatred or opposition or rejection or whatever of Jews. And as you know, this is a very old phenomenon. We find it already in the Greek world, some kind of uneasiness, almost, I would say, aesthetic uneasiness in front of this strange phenomenon that they found this corner of the Middle East. I would say, in a very schematic way, that there are 4 stages in the history of anti-Semitism. This classical anti-Semitism, and then the Paulinian Christian anti-Semitism, which is the main mark, main element of runs all until modern times. Then in modern times, when Jews became emancipated, not anymore recognized as different in many European states, came the third stage of anti-Judaism, which is exactly anti-Semitism in its modern form, Russian, racist form, and then the modern one, the contemporary one, the 4th stage, which is directed mainly against Israel. Now, in one sense, at least, there are more than this, but in one sense at least, the contemporary anti-Judaism or hatred of Israel or whatever is more similar to medieval anti-Semitism, to the religious and theological, which was religious and theological rejection of Judaism, is what I call Paulinian anti-Semitism or rejection of Judaism, then to the modern racist anti-Semitism. Why? I just want to take one element. There are more, but I want to take one element. In medieval anti-Semitism, the option of conversion existed, which has disappeared in racist anti-Semitism. People cannot convert from one race to another. Or this is a deterministic form of existence, race, Zionism, allegedly. But people can and did always convert from one religion to another, accepting presumably ideas, beliefs, ways of life. The way was open. It was more complicated than this, as we saw in Spain, after the forced conversion of Jews in Spain, appeared in Spain the first expression of some kind of racist, blood-based rejection of Judaism. This is another story. Nowadays, the way of conversion is open again. And in fact, the anti-Israeli campaign is almost led by converts. Israelis, ex-Israelis, and Jews, who are today leading in many cases, and if they are not, and they usually don't even understand to what they are being used and abused, and in this campaign, anti-Israeli campaign all over the world. This is probably, to my mind, the ugliest, most problematic morally aspect of contemporary anti-Zionism. I know exactly how it works, and the little anecdote I just told you about of people coming to listen to Barghouti and not listening to me is just one little example of how these things work. Well, I want to begin to finish so we can have some time to questions, but I want to add one thing. I want to add one thing here. Maybe I will permit myself to say, after all this, a few sentences about the book. The book has 3 essays, which are independent of one another, but have a certain common theme, which is the use of the way of the Holocaust become different ways of the Holocaust, or the connection between the Holocaust and anti-Israeli attitudes, ideological, academic, theoretical, etc. The first part, I'm talking about a certain brand, I want to emphasize, a certain brand of Holocaust denial. This is the Holocaust deniers from the French left mainly. They take themselves to be intellectuals, and in a certain way they belong to a certain intellectual subculture. They talk they don't throw stones, they don't eat, they don't burn synagogues. They talk the question of theory. Some of them has gone all the way to straightforward Holocaust denial, to saying in the most explicit and simple way, no, Nazis, Germans, have never destroyed, killed Jews in the gas chambers. And they say, not despite being people from the left, but as they see it, because they think that people belong to the left. Second part deals with what I call in the book the good Israelis. Those people who, like Barghouti, arms, non-arms, Israelis, traveling all over, invited all over. You just, in all big important campuses, you meet them, you see them, you hear them. They are all over the place. Much more than people like me. Much easier for them to travel, to be invited, to be published, to be translated, to be read. And all of them, the ones I deal with, connect in one way or another their very radical criticism of Israel to the Holocaust in different ways. I don't want to get into Just I would add that since the last few years, this phenomenon of the Israelis, the good Israelis, has acquired very interesting characteristics. These people have certain hold in universities in Israel, in Israeli academia. They have a certain following, students, but basically they constitute a very, very small minority, even in universities. They stopped talking to us. They are now talking to their colleagues and comrades abroad, almost exclusively. This is very interesting phenomenon. They are in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem, in Beersheba, in Haifa, in Bailan. They get salaries from this institution and other benefits. I can assure you that, relatively speaking, being a professor in an Israeli university is not such a bad deal. better perhaps being a professor in an American university, but in Israel it's also not that bad. So there I enjoying all this, and at the same time doing what Bhagavad is saying. Maybe just a short anecdote here. One of the guys, or the people, used to be a friend of mine, like some others there, called Abi Ophir, is a professor at Tel Aviv University, and a few other Israeli institutions, has been traveling around like Barghouti, promoting a book he co-edited with some 2 or 3 other people, calling the book basically all kind of theoretical discussion of the justification of the BDS. One of the co-editors of the book is a guy from an arm from the American University in Beirut. And they were going from campus in Europe, and when people in Beirut found out about it, they published a petition or some kind of something. Anyway, a paper called it saying that it is absolutely unacceptable for them, for the university in Beirut, American University in Beirut, that one of the faculty would collaborate with an Israeli. Mind you, the collaboration was about calling BDS against Israel, and Adi Ophir in particular, he has written explicitly about it, is calling more and more explicitly to dismantle Israel, to make it into a binational or whatever state. So even with these people, the faculty of the American University in Beirut are not supposed to collaborate. That's a very interesting thing, I think. Anyway, the third part of the book, and I shall finish with saying a few words about this, is about Hannah Arendt. Now, Hannah Arendt was a great woman. No doubt about it. I think, though, that her attitude towards Israel and towards Zionism, which is very long, it's something which goes all along life, basically, or career, or at least after, since she was a very, very young woman, constitute something which I would call a moral failure. A moral failure. She was apparently internally ambiguous always about her Zionism, about the state of Israel. But I would say she didn't find another solution to this inner strife within her about Israel, which could, sometimes positive, sometimes negative, other than writing this book, some few pieces, and the book on Eichmann, which I think has done tremendous damage to the Zionist idea, to the image of Israel, and in other ways as well. Now, the point is, and this was one of the main reasons why I thought I should write something about her in this book, is that Hannah Arendt has become, as you probably know, today a hero of intellectual culture in the West, and to some extent in Israel as well. She merits, to a large extent, this I would say, this status. She was a very serious woman, very courageous in many ways, a fascinating figure in many, many ways. But the hagiography which is was built around there, I think should be seen as a huge appreciation, sometimes exaggerated, sometimes not, that she enjoys nowadays, should be seen in connection to this her role in presenting this image of Israel to the Jews and non-Jewish public outside of Israel. And this, I would say, and this would be my last remark here, that in a paradoxical sense, through the importance of Hannah Arendt in nowadays in contemporary intellectual culture, through this, her attitudes toward Israel and Zionism, the ambiguity, we can, and all this can, in some sense, explain and expresses something which is again parallel to to what we see in ancient times, at the beginning of Christian culture, and I mean this. Especially if we talk about Pauline theology, Pauline Christianity, the attitudes towards Judaism was constitutive to the Christian self-perception and to Christian civilization in general. And I would go as far as saying that one of the things that we discovered today, that anti-Zionism playing a parallel and similar role, a constitutive role, in the formation of modern, nowadays, contemporary, intellectual culture in the West. This is that important, and because of this importance, it is so harmful and dangerous and morally outrageous. Thank you very much. I'll finish here, so we'll have some time for questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation and for your important work. And I feel like I could ask you 40 questions. So I'll just make some brief comments. I think you touched on many important things. One thing that you touched on was the role of Reform Judaism, you mentioned in the United States. And I find it fascinating, especially in light of President Obama's Seder in the White House. In Reform Judaism, it disconnects from traditional Judaism in the sense that Israel and Jerusalem is no longer the center, but the center is the New Jerusalem would either be Berlin or Washington. The Berlin experience for Reform Jews obviously failed, but there's hope that it will succeed here. And it's also, I would say, that's one phenomenon in the American Jewish community that I find fascinating. Another.
But you agree with this?
I agree. Yeah, I think you touched on something. There's something happening in the American Jewish community that I think is important to look at. And I think the role of Reform Judaism in its perception in relationship to Israel and its perception of its future in the United States is in the American society. I find it fascinating, worthy of serious research.
Okay.
And there's also a disconnect between some of the American Jewish community and Israel, and there's a tension, and some of the criticism perhaps is warranted, but I think there's some that are not. So for people, for example, who are dealing with anti-Semitism in a contemporary context, people like me and other scholars who go around dealing with these issues, who are often perceived as the enemy, even within the Jewish community, among Jewish intellectuals and other liberal intellectuals that were somehow Bush supporters, or neocons, or warmongers, or just
that was happened to me.
Yeah. So we, and as you say, and I think this is very important, we don't have we're not kosher, we haven't converted, in a sense. And so I think this notion of conversion is very powerful too, that you speak to. And I find this extraordinarily dangerous. It reminds me, and I think in the American Jewish leadership in the 1930s, there was a silence, that there was a feeling among some leaders that Yiddish-speaking primitive shtetl Jews coming to the United States would create anti-Semitism, and there wasn't an outcry, even among the Jewish leaders, to bring in refugees when there could have been more done. They knew, Roosevelt knew in 1942 that the Holocaust was underway, etc. And the irrationality of it, because, and then you speak about Holocaust denial, the irrationality that here we have Ahmadinejad and your Iranian regime, not the people, but the regime, that is genocidal in its anti-Semitism. They're open, they're honest, they're consistent, they have an ideology, they have symbols, they have policies, they have religious rulings. They're clear what they want to do. And I would see this as a social movement changing the face of at least the Middle East. And yet you have liberal intellectuals, as you say, particularly in Europe, that speak of a one-state solution, of human rights, of some twisted notion of social justice and national identity, and that Jews are not entitled to self-determination. And yet, we would be throwing, if this would happen, we'd be throwing a democratic society with contradictions and problems to the wolves. And here is a social movement that the left-wing intellectuals would expect Israelis to share society with one of the most reactionary social movements on the planet. This is a social movement that wants to destroy democracy. It wants to kill Jews, or at least remove Jews from having self-determination, create different levels of citizenship for different groups of people, like women and gay people and other religious minorities, have different legal systems, and yet human rights activists and some liberal intellectuals in the West would allow Jews to share that faith with this social movement. So the contradictions are glaring, and I would even say that the Obama's policy on containment of Iran smacks of this problem. How do you perceive? How do we unpack it as intellectuals, as people concerned about human rights, and also not just the fate of the Jewish people, but of social democracy and humane values? How do we get our message across? And just to add to the question, I think one of the difficulties that I have, and I think other scholars have, is that when we speak to well-intentioned, highly educated, well-read, good people in our fields, when we talk about this issue, it's like their eyes glaze over and they're disconnected.
I know.
How do we deal with this? How do we get this message out there, this tremendous and dangerous contradiction?
Should we take small question or should I?
It's up to you.
Okay, let me throw a smoke bomb into the room. Okay, I am a retired U.S. diplomat. I am now an independent scholar. I consider myself conservative. I have always been, although I was never, until very recently, even a member of the Republican Party. If you look at the polling data in the United States, take the most recent one, views on Israel, 63% support. That's general in the public.
More, I think.
Yeah, that's the lowest one. So
the last one, I think, it was more than 70.
yeah, if you take how many? What is 2% of the population is Jewish? There is a vast pool of Americans who have an understanding of Israel, an intuitive affinity, and I will tell you that most of them are not liberal. They may be independent. They may be conservative. They are not represented in most of academia. That is a fact. I think one of the problems I don't speak to Europe because I think that's a different problem. But the problem here is that this political segregation occurred so that people talk to each other and they get in a hothouse environment. But it is not, it is so far, the elite in the United States has not succeeded in convincing the rest of the population. And I will say, I think now with the Tea Party movement and things like that, it's going to be more difficult for the elite to persuade the average American of many points of view, of which anti-Zionism is just one. So that's kind of a positive. The problem is there's a big gulf. The people that you would speak to at universities, absolutely, there is no connection. And the people who have this general sense are completely disconnected. That's a difficult, and I say that because I don't think that's the same in Europe. I think the European issue has a lot more baggage with it. You know, there were many people who experienced the Holocaust and didn't find it negative. So that's a baggage that you can push it down as far as you want.
It's not necessarily better. It's different.
It's different.
It's not necessarily better.
No. I'm not saying it's better, but I'm saying
It's very different.
They're very different atmospheres.
Okay. Yeah.
Two things. One, on May 1st, May 1st, there's going to be May Day, which is a leftist celebration on the New Haven Green. It's Shabbat. For some people wouldn't have anything to do, go there or drive there or anything. But last year there was an Israeli boycott table. And if anyone wants to go and see it and talk with those people, it's going to be on the Green May 1st. And secondly, I was wondering how the non-acceptance of Reform converts and conservative converts to by the Israeli Orthodox rabbis has anything to do with attitudes towards Israel. You know, because there's been a lot of writings in conservative magazines and Reform magazines about conversion problems. Acceptance.
Okay. Let's take another question.
Okay, I want to address two topics that you mentioned in your talk. One is the Holocaust as a major issue for the intellectuals, not the only intellectuals. Ahmadinejad is also one of them, and I don't consider him to be an intellectual. That they use that as a major vehicle to deny the right of Israel to exist. And the other issue is the one-state solution. I think that those two issues became are really a direct result of a policy that had been pursued by the official policy that was pursued by the State of Israel for so many years, that they really hinged the existence of Israel, their justification for the existence, on the Holocaust. On the other hand, for all these years, they put it in the shadow, the situation of the Jews who lived in Arab countries, that the precarious situation that they had lived there, and the very fact that almost none of them left there. All of them left those Arab countries. They are not there anymore. So why? That thing is important because it can serve as a strong indicative to what Jews can expect to live as a minority in a one-state situation. Nobody was talking about it till today. And this is, I think, is the fault of the omission by the Israeli establishment. Why they follow this line, it's beyond me. But I consider that. What is your opinion about it?
Okay, I'll try to comment on the comments. Let me say this. Let me begin from the end. I didn't intend to do it in my book, and not in the very numerous discussions that I participated in all forms after the appearance of the book, neither here in the United States, not even today. I don't want to make the apology of Israel. when we sit, I don't know how many of you know the institution of Friday nights in the Israeli houses, and when we sit, friends, and we do nothing but saying about the government, about the state, about everything that happens. There is a very famous, I think this is maybe the best definition of anti-Semitism, which is that an anti-Semite is someone who hates the Jews more than they deserve. I can say that the same thing can be said about Israel. There's a lot of things that can be said about Israel, a lot of criticism, in many ways. However, I think that the idea that, and I'm talking about quite a lot in my book, the idea that Israel has somehow used the Holocaust in order to justify itself in many ways is false. It is simply not the case. It has become one of the anti-Israeli myths that use the Holocaust as an argument. One of the arguments that this left wing and other Holocaust deniers use is precisely this. Israel, beside the fact that I'm telling in the book an amazing incident that I had. I spent a few hours with one of the main Holocaust deniers of this group. It's called Pierre Guillaume. People of you maybe who deal with Holocaust deniers heard the name. He didn't know at the beginning from where I was from, where I came from. And for hours and hours on, he explained to me, I was asking questions, and he was giving answers. Very nice person, by the way. He's explaining to me that Auschwitz never took place, gas chambers never existed, etc., etc. And when I asked him, look, what kind of